The Department of Justice moved to block a merger between U.S. Airways and American Airlines yesterday. Here's how the Attorney General explained the move, and I quote, "By challenging this merger, the Department of Justice is saying that the American people deserve better. This transaction would result in consumers paying the price in higher airfares, higher fees, and fewer choices," end quote. Assistant editorial page editor James Freeman is here. James, what is the Department of Justice so worried about? What do they think is going to happen if these two companies...
If these two merge, well, they seem very confident predicting that horrible things will happen, that they're going to cut routes and cut hubs and limit services and start charging people more. And it's amazing how much confidence they have, given how wrong they've been in the past when they do intervene in these markets.
When you say they've been wrong in the past, are there other mergers that they've broken up that have then, I don't know, the companies have gone bankrupt or something?
Good guess. In fact, with this very firm, U.S. Airways, 2001, the Department of Justice says roughly what they're saying now. We don't want United and U.S. Airways to get together because it's going to be terrible for consumers and prices will be rising, et cetera, et cetera. Same case they're making today. They blocked it in 2001. Companies called off the merger. The next year, by the next year, they were both in bankruptcy, having filed Chapter 11. So I think you start out with that soundbite about what's good for the American people. I don't think most of the traveling public or taxpayers wants bankrupt airlines.
Yeah, a good guess, James.
I'm not predicting these firms will go bankrupt if this doesn't go through, but
right.
But what Justice is also saying very confidently is that these companies are going to be fine if we don't let them make economic business arrangements, and we'll see.
Well, you know, one of the concerns is about the Washington, D.C. market. And I actually talked to U.S. Airways' Doug Parker, Americans' Tim Horton back in March. Have a listen to what they said at that time about Washington. Yeah, well, that's not going to stop Washington from looking at you guys for antitrust violations. In particular, I know Reagan National in Washington is a concern. What's your answer to that?
Well, our answer is that that's a very robust and competitive marketplace when you look at the 3 airports that serve the Washington metro area. So if you look at it on that basis, the new American will have about 25% of the capacity in that area.
The other point I'd make is we will serve smaller communities than anyone who receives anyone that would receive those slots would serve. So I think it'd be doing a disservice to United States consumers to take slots away from the house and have them go to a carrier who will just use them to fly to larger markets that are already being served.
So, James, you heard that, 25% of the market share.
Right.
How does Justice then look at that merger and conclude that it's going to limit competition?
Well, you have to be a Justice Department lawyer with a lot of flexibility on how you define a market. If you draw the line around American and U.S. Airways, that looks like they're controlling that market. Obviously, if you think of National Airport in D.C., I think most travelers, especially if we're going into town to interview a member of Congress or someone in the regulatory agency, sure, we'd rather fly from National. It's right there. We'd rather not take the cab out to Dulles. But this is not one of life's great hardships. And the point is that it keeps prices lower. You know, you can't double the price versus a Dulles flight, or people will drive out on the access road and fly from the airport in the suburbs. But the forecasts on how this is going to harm consumers are largely suppositions. And it's interesting, you point out this focus is very much in the complaint from Justice, Reagan National. Gee, you know, why are they so focused on Reagan National? Why are they so concerned about that particular airport?
Because it's the airport that they use?
And
certainly
they hear from a lot of members of Congress all the time about what they want to happen at Reagan and the routes that they like to get back to their districts versus what would be economical. Now, the merged company is not saying they're cutting out those routes. In fact, some members of Congress are saying keep it the way it is, it works well. But you do have to wonder, given that airport and its flights are so politicized, is this really a market judgment or something else?
Got about a minute left, James. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought one of the great highlights of the Obama administration was to allow these kinds of airline mergers to take place. So do you have any sense from your reporting or sources to telling you what has changed in the thinking of the administration?
Well, if you read the complaint, what they seem to be saying is that they were wrong in the past when they analyzed mergers. Now, this is incredible because if you look at the history, you would say, if anything, they've been too interventionist. We mentioned United and U.S. Air headed to bankruptcy, going into bankruptcy after the last time Justice blocked a merger. The whole industry, all of essentially what they call the legacy carriers, essentially have gone bankrupt, and it's only through merging Delta and Northwest, some other deals, that they were able to stay in business and operate profitably. And ultimately, that's what I think, as I said, flyers and taxpayers want. Because remember, if they fail, there's a risk their pension liabilities get thrown onto us.
Yeah, and if you compare the U.S. airlines to other airlines around the world, there's certainly room for improvement.
And the whole plan from these two companies is about growth. Now, maybe they're lying and Justice can just intuit this, but it's a strange complaint.
They know better, James. Assistant
I guess so.
editorial page
Okay.
editor James Freeman, thanks so much.
Thanks, Barry.